What's up, everybody? I'm Katie.
And I'm Morgan.
And this is For Your Misinformation, a podcast dedicated to empowering women to be more politically engaged so we can act in our own best interests.
Let us break down the problem and tell you what we're doing and what you can do to help solve it.
Hi, Morgan.
Hi, Katie.
How are you today?
Tired. I think we're all kind of just tired.
Okay, I have to tell you something. I'm not really tired. I'm energized. I know I kind of said this last week, but it feels now sort of like everybody's as pissed as I have felt inside for a long time. And it's like, okay, well, I'm going to work hard. I just want to push this as far as it's going to go. And it's I don't know. I didn't think I have felt for a long time that it was time for a revolution, kind of something had to shift. And I didn't really think it was going to start so soon. And I'm excited.
You know what? That's a good point. Also, I feel like that speaks very clearly to the importance of getting off Facebook. Because I think that's why I'm so tired, because I keep having to explain the same things to the same old people, and it's exhausting. I think there's also that level of it's so cool to see people actually really coming together for the cause of making our country an actual good place for everybody.
Yeah, the way it was supposed to be.
The way it was supposed to be, or the way that it always should have been.
Yeah.
Obviously it's going to take a long time. And I think that's one of the big things, is just that people don't lose sight of that right now. Is, it takes a long time to undo systemic problems. And, no race reform, no racial reform has been accomplished quickly.
Right.
And it's going to take all of the people continuing to work on this for such a long time. But I feel like maybe this time we're actually going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. The racist Facebook posts become I don't know, the people who tell people to go back to their country, which is just harassment, which emboldens the other people to do the actual assaults, which it's just you can't allow any of it, because it turns into something really ugly and dangerous.
Yep. And I feel this is something that shouldn't be a political issue. It should not matter who you vote for or who you want to be the president. This shouldn't be a political issue. This is just a human rights issue.
Exactly.
This is just all Americans affected by this. If one group of people in this country are unfairly disadvantaged or unfairly judged and hated and just everything, then it shows that our whole country needs help and kittens.
Okay. Do you want to talk about COVID? We're recording this on June 10th.
Yeah, let's do a quick COVID update.
Okay.
Because surprise, a pandemic doesn't go away just because we decided to focus on something else instead.
A different pandemic.
Yeah, the pandemic that is COVID-19 doesn't go away just because we've decided to shift our focus to the pandemic that is racism.
Exactly.
Although maybe we should call racism an epidemic, because it's maybe not in enough countries. I don't know. I don't know enough
that's pretty hopeful.
Yeah, I know. I know that there's a lot of European and Asian countries that are pretty racist. I don't know, because I've never really been to any of the Central or South American countries to know what race is like there. But one of my friends that grew up in Kenya, she came over here and she's I thought that racism in America died with the civil rights movement. Like she didn't know that America was super racist.
The last racist shot Martin Luther King Jr. and then went to jail, and there were no more racists.
Yeah, like she legitimately like I'm like, oh, so you were taught the same history, the same U.S. history I was, and you were under the impression that racism went away after the civil rights movement of the 60s, and it did not. And she came to the U.S. and was just like, oh, what the fuck?
That's sad.
Like, we don't talk about race where I grew up. Like, this isn't a thing there. Like, what the fuck? So I felt real bad about that for her. But she's doing okay now.
Good.
She's still in the States. But I don't think she listens to this podcast.
That's okay. She knows more about.
I know, she definitely does. Yeah, but like that also kind of reminds me of like when we learn Black history in U.S. public schools. For one, we only learn about slavery and then the civil rights movement. Mm-hmm. And second off, like we learn that a very like whitewashed version of it. And third off, we don't learn about Black history anywhere else. We don't learn about Black history in Africa. We don't learn about Black history in Latin or Central America or South America. We don't learn about Black history anywhere else. I don't know. Like, I feel like, why did they teach us about Mesopotamia, but they didn't actually teach us about
Mesopotamia between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers?
Yeah, like I'm like,
who cares?
I don't need to know about that.
Or quicksand.
So, like, especially because, like right now we're in a pandemic and experiencing a lot of, hopeful change regarding race relations in the States. And yet, like, not enough people have made the connection between racism as a public health concern. Like the discussion of how disproportionately COVID-19 has affected Black people and other people of color is not talked about enough. And I'm like, wow, how American of us.
Yeah, for sure.
Just like ignore the race problem around this.
So I think what you said, we hit 2 million COVID cases today and 115,000 COVID deaths in America as of June 10th. Great. And was there anything else we wanted to talk about with COVID?
Just to remember that it is still a thing, and we still need to just keep an eye on it and not forget how grossly mishandled it has been. There are ways that we can avoid, when I say we, I mean we as a nation, but also the world can avoid mishandling the next pandemic or the resurgence of COVID-19 should we have another huge surge in cases in the fall or winter. There are ways we can do that. I like to think that the federal government is thinking about those things now. However, I'm not hopeful about it. So just kind of that reminder to don't freak out or panic, but also consider having enough toilet paper on hand that the next time it all disappears from shelves, because COVID cases are rapidly going up, that you don't have to knock over an old lady for your Charmin Mega Roll.
Yeah.
Like, let's just keep that general, like, emergency preparedness, and also let's continue fighting for like a living wage and all of the other things that we have noticed since the pandemic started, that like, oh shit, America's really bad about the way that we treat workers and pay workers, and the way that anything and everything in this country is disproportionately affecting people of color. Like, just keep those things in mind, because even if COVID did go away tomorrow, all of the issues around COVID that have really been like brought to the forefront of discussion, like those don't go away.
Right. They just stop affecting so many people.
Yeah. So let's, just kind of keep those things in mind. Probably don't have to be reminding any of you listeners about that, but
I wanted to mention like risk reduction as people are going to start hanging out again and going back to work and even protesting. Like, I don't knock anybody who's going to these protests. Like, racism is a huge epidemic in this country, like we talked about, and it's worth protesting. But there's definitely ways that you can reduce risk by wearing a mask. Mm-hmm. I think most people are. I think it's mostly the law enforcement who aren't wearing masks, but bringing hand sanitizer and using it often. If you can avoid like chanting and yelling, that spreads droplets more than other forms of like making noise, or if you could just bring a sign or something like that. And then if you're just going to hang out in general, like doing it outside is so much better and more safe than doing it inside. And there are some, I forget where I learned this, but there are some, I think like a best practice is picking like another family that you'll hang out with, but like agreeing that like as other than that you'll socially distance, like both family units will socially distance. And that seems
that's
really
what I'm
smart.
doing with my family.
That seems
like,
so smart.
I'm going to visit my family sometimes, but I'm not hanging out with any of my friends. Like if I'm going to see my friends, it's going to be because we're all sitting far away from each other in a parking lot. Like if I'm going to be around people, it's going to be my sweet little nieces who don't understand pandemics and just want to be cuddled.
Yeah, I think that's all I had about coronavirus.
Oh, we love talking about coronavirus and we love talking about racism and we love talking about dirty, rotten politics.
Yes.
I'm excited to learn about this week's topic. I'm excited for you to educate me on dark money.
Okay, so this week, this dark money, campaign finance reform, ending Citizens United, those are all really just talking about ending different forms of corruption in politics, but it's really the same idea. So some of the terms that you need to know are campaign finance. So that at the heart of like all of these policy issues that we ever talk about, like, is how campaigns are paid for and who politicians are beholden to as a result. So you and me, like politicians who only accept small dollar grassroots donations because they aren't influenced by corporations or lobbyists. It's why we really liked Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders so much, because like you and I probably gave her like $20. That can't convince her to change her policy on like clean energy. She'll
how she feels about things, how she feels about things.
Right.
Like her policies are policies, and it's not like the gun lobby's like, hey, here's $200,000
or more.
Or more.
That's like small potatoes to them.
Us.
Exactly.
And it levels the playing field.
That's how I see it in my head. Is I see like sometimes I feel like the metaphors that I like give you guys are like, people are like, okay, great, Katie, that was not helpful. We cannot see what's inside your brain. That's not working. But like the way that I see it is like people are on different like, they're on it. I basically see it as a bar graph, and like some people are at different like heights of bars based on how much money they have, because of the way our campaign finance system is set up, the more money you have, the more speech you have, the more like speech units is like the way that I think about it. And if you end Citizens United, if you reform the way that our campaign finance system works, then exactly I see all of those bars as like dropping to the bottom and everybody evening out, so that everybody has one freedom voucher, one like free speech voucher, instead of like me getting one, you getting one, Mark Zuckerberg getting one. But then Mark Zuckerberg also has billions of dollars, and because our campaign finance system is so fucked up, he can turn those into like speech bucks, speech free, I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
That sounds insane.
exactly. Like it really does though, because it's like, I mean, money is how you buy ads. It's
Yeah,
how you
exactly.
buy influence. It's like how people buy you. I mean, corporations could just buy off whoever they want to get elected.
Yeah. And that hasn't always
And
been the case.
no, it hasn't. Like I always think of Shirley Chisholm. Like she was. I mean, she's like the OG. I mean, she wasn't the first person to do grassroots fundraising, but at the same time, she's a black woman running for a political office long before that was common.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's still not common enough.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's like, well, we don't have to worry about her. A black woman isn't even allowed to have money in this country. And she was like, bitch, I got friends.
Mm-hmm.
And they just wrote letters and people sent dollars. And it's like, it's amazing. And I think we need to have that model again, because you look at her as that example of like, this is how it levels the playing field.
Yeah.
You know, it allowed this awesome candidate to get where she deserved to be, maybe not as far as she deserved to go, but like through grassroots fundraising and just on her own merits, on her own, you know, you really have to be an awesome candidate in order to get people to want to donate to your campaign.
Exactly.
And you don't have to be an awesome candidate to get a huge corporation or some lousy millionaire or billionaire to donate to you. Like, all you have to be is a pushover, or broke. I mean,
or not have the values, not have the the integrity to say, oh no, thank you, like I want to be able to make my own decisions. That like Bernie had such incredible grassroots support, but he could do whatever the fuck he wanted because like he could afford to lose our $12 donation. He doesn't need us. But like Mitt Romney can't afford to lose the NRA's endorsement, because like then he would have to find, instead of having like three different several million, I mean, I'm making that up. I haven't looked at, like, I'm sure Mitt Romney gets some grassroots donors, but I'm just saying, like, instead of being like, our politicians should look like NASCAR cars. Like they should have the logos of the companies that own them all over them. And like Bernie wouldn't have any companies on him because he would have teeny tiny little faces like yours and mine.
Yeah. And then when you think of like the Republicans right now who are not standing up to Trump, despite the fact that not only is he morally bankrupt, he is ineffective as a president. You're like, why aren't they standing up? Like, what does he have on them? Is he blackmailing them? Well, I mean, some of them probably, but also he is a wealthy person with wealthy friends and a lot of power to say, well, fine, I'm going to tell my wealthy friends who are, you know, able to make or break your campaign financially, not to give you money anymore if you don't go along with whatever I want you to, you know. So whether it's dirt and blackmail or whether it's just controlling a campaign financially, that's a lot of influence.
Yeah.
And like, that's not right. Like,
It's not how it was intended at all.
It's, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and say it's fundamentally un-American.
You're right. So so it should be a no-brainer. Transparency is good. This is another example of things that are good in relationships and in politics. Transparency is good. So Citizens United, when people talk about ending Citizens United, it was a Supreme Court ruling. And yesterday when I texted you that you were going to be especially annoyed by this, it has to do with Michael fucking Moore. Like, did you know that? Like, somehow it actually comes back to Michael Moore, the filmmaker. Okay, so he made, I don't want to get too into this because it doesn't really matter. Like, but it is very weird that this is how it started, and like the impact that Citizens United had is so immense. And like it started as a fucking documentary. Like Michael Moore wrote wrote Fahrenheit 9/11, which was basically what the Bush campaign said was like an ad against the Bush campaign. But the courts were like, well, that was made by media. That was made by Michael Moore. Like, that's fine. And the Bush people were like, well, fine, then like we'll make a documentary. So they made a 90-minute, like basically like hit piece on Hillary Clinton. And it was not paid for by the Bush campaign. And it went to the courts and they were like, no, this is like a campaign ad. Like you have to pay for this. Like you can't, this doesn't count as like what this film company did for you in making this is like a contribution to your campaign that counts. Like you're not allowed to do that. And that's how it started. Was like Michael Moore made a movie talking shit about George Bush, and the Republicans wanted to were like, well, that's not fair. We want to talk shit about Hillary Clinton, and it went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And Justice Kennedy, who was the swing vote on the court for a really, really long time, like has these weird libertarian ideologies, which are always like good in theory, but do not end up working out, which it's been 10 years since the Citizen United ruling came out, and it's fucked up our entire politics. And Justice Kennedy still thinks he was right to make that decision. So, okay, we'll get to it. But basically,
God damn it.
I know. Basically, the ruling was that corporations are people, and that restricting their right to contribute to political campaigns would infringe on their right to free speech, as if corporations are people, because they vote, they pay taxes. I'd love for them to pay taxes. Amazon, Jeff Bezos, please pay your taxes.
Yeah, or just give us $1 million. That would be fine too.
Yeah, we would be better stewards of your fortune than you. We promise.
Yeah. Also, this is what set the precedent for like when they made that ruling that corporations are people. So Hobby Lobby didn't have to provide comprehensive medical care to their employees.
Yep. Don't go to Hobby Lobby.
Corporations are like, we don't want to have to provide medical care to our employees either. And you're just like, this is a nightmare.
Yeah. You know what we don't talk about enough is like using your pocket. I mean, I'm sure we do, but like, don't give places like that your money. Like that hurts their bottom line. Like don't go to Home Depot. Don't go to Hobby Lobby. Go to Lowe's and Michael's and Joann Fabrics. They seem like nice people and they deserve your money. Some people...
Also Ben & Jerry's. Buy all the Ben & Jerry's.
Oh yeah, they're nice too. And
love them.
Dr. Bronner's. Okay, anyway. It is ridiculous, and anybody could see that it was ridiculous. And Justice Kennedy, like I said, has these weird libertarian views. If you've ever read 1984 by George Orwell, he is very concerned about free speech. Except what he did is actually fully fuck up free speech, because he basically gave all the rich people, the people who own corporations, megaphones, and none of us have megaphones. So nobody can hear us. So we have to fix campaign finance reform. Like the reason that the oil and gas lobby and all the, like, they have so much money that, and there's actually like, I mean, there's a lot of like things that compound each other that if you fixed like one thing, it would probably like, so have you heard of 501c4s? So I've never, the Wellness Coalition that we used to be on was a 501c3, or at least we were talking about turning it into a 501c3. 501c4s are supposed to be social welfare organizations, but the FEC doesn't regulate them at all. Yeah. So basically what they've become is money laundering. So you can...
Legal money laundering.
Exactly. Legal money laundering so that you can bribe campaigns. Because you're not allowed to give... So I'm pretty sure, or at least the way that I think about it, 501c4s are super PACs. So they're allowed to give unlimited amounts of money and they don't have to disclose who it came from. So I think the word for that is like fungible. You can't tell where the money came from because it's been like, it's like a shell game. Like so like ExxonMobil could donate to a 501c4 called Save the Sea Turtles, and then Save the Sea Turtles could donate to Ted Cruz, and everybody would be like, oh my God, Ted Cruz saves sea turtles. And it's like, no, he fucking doesn't. Like Ted Cruz is an alien. He doesn't save sea turtles.
Yeah, Ted Cruz is the Zodiac killer, and he eats sea turtles for fun.
Exactly. I've heard that also. Put that on his Wikipedia. So yeah, so it's all fucked up. It's such a mess, and people predicted it. Obama predicted it. People were like, I know what this is going to do to U.S. politics, and Justice Kennedy was like, no, I can't. We can't infringe on free speech. And people were like, oh, don't worry, that's not what's going to happen. And he was like, no, it is. I'm so smart. I'm sorry. I have to fuck up I have to potentially end the American experiment because of this. It certainly like expedited it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that fungible stuff that all those funds, that's basically dark money. Dark money is a term that refers to campaign contributions that can't be traced to a source. And that also means that that source could be foreign corporations or governments.
I'm sorry, if I had a bunch of money that couldn't be tracked to a source just randomly pop up into my bank account, I'm still going to have to like pay taxes and probably get audited.
Yeah, people are going to look into that.
That's bullshit.
But no, not these 501c4s. Yeah, so can't trace it, could be foreign corporations or government, and almost assuredly is. And a lot of it is probably Russian and Chinese. There's a lot of bad actors that are trying to influence our elections, and we basically have been like, yeah, we welcome that. We're into it. So a political action committee, not a super PAC, just a PAC. My understanding is that they do disclose where their contributions come from. So Justice Kennedy's argument is that the problem isn't money in politics. The problem is disclosure laws. So he thinks that people should be able to say whatever they want to say as long as you can trace it back to where the money came from. So he thinks that his decision was correct, just that these disclosure laws aren't strong enough. As if people are going to like nobody fact checks shit. Like it just doesn't. Well, it works in theory. It doesn't work in practice.
Yes, like every libertarian idea.
Precisely.
Also, like especially in the age of let's only have a fifth of as many journalists as we need. Like,
right. Yeah.
Because they're the ones that do the fact checking. They're the ones that are there.
Yeah.
Holding things like campaign finance accountable, asking the important questions, and when we do not have them, we have more corruption.
Yeah.
It comes out of our pockets in the end.
Yes. And that is so true that banks give higher interest rates to towns that don't have newspapers because they understand that like they're more likely to be corrupt because they don't have journalists to hold the people accountable. Yeah, isn't that crazy?
And that's also where so this isn't just stuff we're spewing because we're part of the left or the liberal conspiracy. Like this is actual stuff that economists know.
Right.
They know that.
Like which is why it ate into banks' bottom line so much that they started doing something about it.
Yeah, like
crazy.
That's a problem.
It's an ad for journalists.
Yeah, it is. Every time a newspaper shuts down in a city, the interest rates there are going to go higher because the corruption's going to rise.
All the bad people
nobody's going to be reporting on it.
Exactly. All the people who have been like having to try hard to get away with shit are like, ugh, thank goodness I don't have to try as hard anymore because that pesky journalist was keeping me in line. Yeah. So PACs are okay. It's still like more ideal to get your money from grassroots donors, but PACs, they do have limitations and you can tell where they come from. So like, I think Emily's List is a PAC. Like a PAC isn't necessarily a bad thing. 501c4s / super PACs, and if they're not the same thing, they're close enough to the same thing, are bad. And they don't have to disclose and they're basically untraceable. And almost all the time in right-wing politics, it's the Koch brothers.
Yeah.
Which actually you know a lot about because aren't they from Iowa?
There's something.
There's a lot of
from here, but there's a lot of Koch industries here. Like there's one down the street from me. There's big Koch Industries building, and I want to paint the sign or tear it off and throw rocks at it, or at least pee on it every time I go by.
Yeah, I support all of that.
Yeah, I have not yet because it's downtown and it's a very busy street. But someday I might.
So they're actually only one of them are still alive, and I don't even care enough to learn which one. One of them's still alive. They're basically evil, but they're
both named Kevin.
Sure. Kevin A and Kevin B Koch. But they're awful. One of them, God, it's such a funny story too, because it's such a Kevin-like thing to do. One of them ran for office as a libertarian a long ass time ago. And he won such a small percentage of the vote because his ideas are dumb and unpopular that he threw a tantrum and he was like, well, fine. If I can't win office, I'm going to buy politicians because he has enough money. So he basically like took his ball and went home. It's so annoying. Isn't that perfect that he was just like, I didn't win and I don't want to try hard to win next time. So I'm going to cheat.
I'm going to buy off politicians so then I'm still really in control.
Exactly.
Although my name and my face isn't all over the campaign ads.
Yeah. So Montana is like a super good case study of campaign finance reform because they're like a really resource rich state, which means that unfortunately like people have tried to take advantage of them a lot. So in the early like 1900s, the Anaconda Copper Company basically came in and set up a mine that I think now is the largest Superfund site in America. It's called the Berkeley Pit. Actually, my senior year of college, I took geographic information systems class where you can like superimpose toxic release sites and cancer diagnoses. Yeah, it was super. That was my final project, and it was
so interesting.
It was so interesting, and like, of course, there was a correlation. But anyway, so the largest Superfund site, I think, still in the United States, is in Montana. It's called the Berkeley Pit, where they were mining. So they basically. Go ahead.
I did not know anything about that in Montana, though.
Mm-hmm. Like, I didn't either.
I had no idea.
I had to watch a documentary about it. It's a great documentary. I've watched it several times. Like, that is how good it was. And actually, when did I text you about Steve Bullock? Remember he ran for president. He was the governor of Montana.
Oh, yeah.
He's running for Senate in Montana. Everybody support him. He's awesome. I had no idea, which is so sad because he was running for president. So the only thing, did we talk about this already? The only thing he ever talked about in any of like the only thing I remember about him at all, the one thing that he repeated, and like, messaging is important. You have to repeat it a lot. But the one thing that he repeated is that he was the only person on stage who won in a red state. Which is fine. Oh. Like, that's probably important. Somebody was like, oh yeah, that's really good. But the really cool thing about him is he knows how to fight campaign finance reform. He knows how important campaign finance reform is because he was the attorney general in Montana. And Montana has the best campaign finance laws in the country. And it's just like a bummer that I didn't hear anything about that. And, you know, like we watched like we pay attention, you know, like if people were going to remember that, I don't know, it would have been us, but I'll tell you about him now. He's a cool dude.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's so awesome.
This guy yeah, we wish. Yeah. So it basically became the Anaconda Copper Company came in, set up a mine that is like the giant Superfund site. It kills hundreds of migrating geese a year who land in it accidentally because it has this pH of stomach acid. Isn't that sad? Mm-hmm.
Oh, no. I mean, obviously, geese and I don't get along very well, but I still don't want
just
that
the one who
for
attacked
them.
you.
Yeah, just that one specific goose. Fuck that goose.
So, as if that wasn't bad enough, so like I said, early 1900s, long time ago, nobody from then is alive anymore. I mean, sorry, like nobody who was like, you know what I mean? Like nobody's going to be like, Grandpa, tell us about the Anaconda Copper Company. Like if we had people who were still alive around they'd be like, oh yeah, don't let money influence your politics. Like look at this shit that happened in Montana. But nope, they're all dead. So sorry. So they also bought all the newspapers because they know that investigative journalists root out corruption. And then they became so rich, they were able to buy most of the legislators. So I've honestly started thinking about journalists as the police that like really solve crime and corruption. Like we said, corrupt politicians celebrate when newspapers close in their town because they know they can get away with more now that less people are watching. So Montana saw what happened and they enacted, like the Berkeley Pit is what happened, basically. Like bad things started happening in Montana because they were being exploited for their resources, which is what happens to most places that have resources, which is sad.
Including entire countries. Like entire countries with resources end up getting the shit exploited
pretty much
out
every
of them.
time. Like almost never is it the company, or I'm sorry, is it the country with the resources that benefits from. Yeah. They usually end up getting exploited. Yeah. It's really sad. So they saw that happen and they enacted the strictest campaign finance laws on the books. They had donation limits that were really low, they had transparency laws, and things were going great. Like most most Montana legislators had other jobs like farmers and teachers, which is exactly what you want because they know what real life is like. Lindsay and I talked about last week how out of touch most politicians are because they're fucking millionaires and they don't have the problems that you and I have. So this is just another example of that. But like Montana still they have like a pretty rich history of like having citizen legislators that like are farmers, and then like John Tester, I think is his name. He and his wife still own a farm. So yeah, I don't know. Montana's a cooler place than I realized.
I have always kind of wanted to live in Montana. Pretty. I love Montana. I applied for like 2 jobs there one time and I didn't get them. So I was really sad. So if we have any listeners in Montana who would like a public health professional, at me.
My old boss is a public health professional in Montana. So let me look into that. I think she lives in Helena, but don't quote me. Yeah, so they know what real life is like. So in Montana, corporations were only allowed to give the same amount as people were, which was $630, which is not enough to bribe anybody, but like $1 million might be, especially if you know that if you don't take that $1 million, that they're going to spend it in ads for your opponent or against you or for your opponent. So yeah, campaign finance reform is really important. So that's like one part of a strong campaign finance system is low limits on amounts corporations can donate, which is what they had in Montana. But the other part is a strong independent media, which, like you said, we are struggling with all over the country. But yeah, they're the ones who catch the shit. They're the ones who notice the patterns. You also need uncompromised courts. And I would say that, I mean, without a doubt, our Supreme Court is compromised at this point, but we can still do that kind of work on state levels. So yeah, for about 100 years, everything in Montana was awesome. And then the Citizens United ruling happened, and the Supreme Court said that corporations are people and that they do get to donate. And Montana was like, fuck you guys. We know our history and we don't want that. And the Supreme Court, so they took it all the way to the Supreme Court. Steve Bullock did. He took it all the way to the Supreme Court and was like, fuck your campaign, fuck Citizens United. Like, we want our strong campaign finance laws. And they struck him down 8-1. And they were like, no, bitch, we meant what we said. Like, we think corporations are people and that money is free speech and that they should be able to donate however much they want. So they had to start all over.
Corporations aren't people and money isn't free speech.
I know, everybody knows it. Everybody knows it on like a logic level. It's so stupid. So they had to start all over and pass new laws at the state level. So at this point in time, after the Citizens United ruling, almost every Republican in Montana has their seat because of dark money. Because what the Koch brothers saw when the Citizens United ruling happened is they were like, oh, we can buy anybody now. We can buy all politicians now. And they have enough money that they can buy politicians all over the country. So they didn't want any wishy-washy politicians. They want politicians who they know how they're going to vote before they even get into Congress or state legislatures, whatever. So the Koch brothers, like when they say that they're going to donate to a candidate, they make them sign a thing. So like I think every Republican in Congress, or at least everyone that's gotten money from the Koch brothers, they're the biggest environmental polluters in the United States. If you want Koch dollars, which people desperately do, you have to sign something that says you won't enact any legislation that will spend any money trying to fix climate change. That's why Republicans won't do shit. Like they literally like signed a piece of paper that says like, here, we'll give you this money, signed evil Koch brother, as long as you promise not to do anything that actually puts any money towards fixing climate change. Like that's how fucked up our politics is. That's how corrupt it is. And that's because of Citizens United. I mean, it's because of a lot of things, but a huge part of it is because of Citizens United. So yeah, so almost every Republican in Montana state legislature at this point has their seat because of dark money, and it's going to be hard to get them to argue for a fair system because the system in place benefits them, which is kind of the same thing that's true with white supremacy. It's like the original conspiracy theory that we all have to debunk. But yeah, so the name of the main bad guy in this Montana story is Art Whittick, and he's like super annoying. But he's the guy who created the 10-year plan to kick all of the like moderate Republicans out and replace them with like Trumpy Republicans. So ironically, Art Whittick was a politician in Montana, and he wanted everybody to be as like extreme in their views as he was. The ridiculous thing about the Citizens United ruling is that it actually gets rid of your freedom of speech because you can't hear my $15 donation versus like Elon Musk's cool 10 million. Did you see his tweet the other day about how like he was like, this might be unpopular, but marijuana was an essential service during coronavirus, and there's people sitting in jails for marijuana related charges. This might be an unpopular opinion, but I think that's wrong. And it's like,
bro, that is the only popular opinion you have ever spouted.
It's just insane that we think this guy's a genius. Like,
also, yeah, like this has been something we've been talking about for literally years when they first brought up, like, maybe we should legalize marijuana. Like, this is something we've been talking about for a long time, dude. Yeah, no, I didn't see that tweet because, like, everything I have ever learned or heard about Elon Musk, I heard or learned accidentally.
Yeah.
Like, there's never been any intentional, like, I wonder how Elon Musk is doing.
No, he sucks. Yeah. So then basically, because of these like 501c4s, they're able to manipulate entire districts because like politics is just child's play to like international businessmen with money who like want to come in and exploit the resources of a state. They're the oligarchs. Like Elon Musk is one of our oligarchs. Yeah. And look, our oligarch is so stupid. He doesn't understand. Like, people are like, I don't want the federal government to waste my resources. And it's like, well, there's people in the federal government who understand the unfairness of people being in jail for marijuana expenses, and Elon Musk doesn't. So I want them deciding where my tax money goes. So yeah, so we need campaign finance reform so that our voice counts as much as theirs. Like you said, level the playing field. Like, ugh. In theory, the Federal Election Commission or the FEC would enforce laws that say, because really those 501c4s are supposed to be social welfare organizations. Yeah. They're not supposed to be for political spending, but the FEC is 6 people. It's 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans, and the 3 Republicans won't do anything. They vote together every single time. So like nothing is actually getting done. So once again, it's the Republicans that are like grinding government to a halt. So they don't enforce those laws, which basically leaves it to journalists to uncover violations that are hiding in plain sight. And they are. Like, you can check FEC contributions, but who has time for that? Like, you and I barely even probably ever do that.
Yeah.
So obviously it is just so much better to prevent any of this from happening in the first place. But like, it has gotten so out of hand. But basically, we just don't want corporations to be able to donate money to political campaigns. Period. They don't vote. They're not people. Freedom of speech can't be violated because they're not people. And the result of this awful Citizens United ruling is rampant corruption. So I don't know. It's so manipulative. Even like, so these outside groups, these like 501c4s, these super PACs, whatever, they even like, they do the campaigning for the candidates. Like, they even create and send out a handwritten wife letter from the candidate's wife, which is like the most effective campaign like material that they have. And it's not real. Like
hate that.
All these, what they did in Montana is it was the right to work people. The right to work like had a 501c4, I think. And they contacted each Republican campaign, and they were like, do you want our help? And most of them were like, yes, I do. And then they gave them the works. The package was called the works, where they'd send out a letter that looked like it was from an organization called Mothers Against Child Predators. Not a lie. An actual organization that was made just so that they could send campaign letters that was like against the Democrat running, or not even just against the Democrat, against the moderate Republican. That's how they got Montana to be full of all these really extremist Republicans. So they'd send out letters that said Mothers Against Child Predators is against so-and-so. And then the next week they'd send out a letter that looked like it was from that person's wife that was like, he's a great person and he saved a drowning baby from a fire. I don't know.
I hate it so much.
And then the next week it would be from a right to work thing so it was a coordinated, and they would give all of those materials to all the candidates that wanted them. And it was a journalist that was like, this shit's fishy. And he's the one that put together all of this stuff. And they were like, oh no, these count as campaign contributions. Or they should.
Yeah, they should. Yeah.
Yeah. So the other thing is that this is now 2016 that I'm talking about. Like, campaigning on the internet is relatively new, so it's being exploited. Like, the laws aren't keeping up with it. They're still not keeping up with it. And we haven't really come very far since then. Only 10 states in the United States get an A in terms of campaign finance laws. And Montana is now one of them. Like, they were able to fix it, I think. And we'll get to that. But yeah, just think of super PACs as money laundering, and 501c4s are PACs with unlimited lobbying power. So all we want to know is who's donating to political campaigns and how much, so we can figure out their motivations. I mean, really what I want is for them not to be able to give substantial amounts to political campaigns at all. But even if they are going to be able to, we have to have transparency, because we can learn from Montana. So what we really have to do is pass ballot initiatives at the state level. So we're going to have decentralized government for a while. I only looked up Illinois, but Illinois has pretty good disclosure laws, but they have no limits on contributions. Isn't that crazy? So
that is crazy.
So Illinois is actually what Kennedy's dream is. He wants people to be able to spend it, and there's a few amount, but there's a couple lawyers who think that this is the right choice too. I just don't understand them. But they want people and corporations to be able to spend as much as they want, as long as you can look up and see who's paying for what. And I'm a very politically active person who lives in Illinois, and I don't think I've ever looked up who contributed to anybody's campaign except for maybe Dan Lipinski's, because I really super hate him. But yeah, so I don't know. It's just, in practice, it is not good. It's not effective. Look how fucked up it made our country. So yeah, so most Republicans are beholden to the Kochs through various, they actually call them the Kochtopus, because they have their arm in so many different fake organizations, making it look like they support different stuff. Most Republicans are beholden to the Kochs and signed an agreement that they won't do anything about climate change that costs money. They have the Kochs have a ton of their money in oil, and it's in their best interest to not regulate it. So Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, in exchange for a shit ton of Koch money, they deny climate change. And hundreds of other Republicans in Congress do the same. And the interesting thing is that Trump doesn't need their money, because the Koch brothers, I think combined have about $90 billion. Tom Steyer and Donald Trump and J.B. Pritzker, I think, all have about $3 billion. $1 billion is a crazy amount of money for people to have.
Insane.
Jeff Bezos is approaching $1 trillion. He's about to be the first person to have $1 trillion, which again is absurd. And he doesn't pay taxes.
People that work for him can't even afford food on their tables.
Yeah. And their quotas make it so that they can't take a bathroom break, because otherwise they won't meet their work goals. So, yep, sure sounds like an oligarch to me.
Awesome.
Yeah. But so Trump doesn't need the Koch money, but that doesn't mean that he's not being influenced. He's just being influenced by different people. He's being influenced by the Russians. We've talked about this before, but they assuredly do have compromat on him. It's probably not an actual P-tape. It's probably more shitty financial disclosures and all the stuff that was going on with Jeffrey Epstein. But which, might be a P-tape. Who knows? I don't want to say there's not a P-tape. Might be a P-tape, but it's probably something else. But yeah, so what the Koch brothers want is for no money to be spent on climate change legislation. What the Russians want is for Donald Trump to lift the Russian sanctions that the Obamas, which he did. So essentially what Citizens United did is make bribery legal in American politics. That's like as clear as I can make it. What I did, and probably will do again, is I went back after learning this was to watch or to listen to, there's an episode of Gaslit Nation called How to Pass a Law, and it's about passing child seatbelt laws in California, but like, I don't know, you can apply it anywhere. Now that I've learned how shitty Illinois' campaign finance laws are, it's like, well, somebody's going to have to do something about it. So I'll look into that. But I would recommend listening to that How to Pass a Law episode of Gaslit Nation and just figuring out what's going on in your state. And I would like to remind everybody that, I don't know, red states they take in more resources than
Well, it's true though. Like right now, so many Republicans are trying to say that, well, it's the blue states that everything's bad's happening right now. It's like, okay, for one, that's not true. And for two, when they talk about, well, inner cities are having all this crime and these riots and stuff, and that's where the people are on welfare. What they're actually talking about are Black people. They're actually being really racist whenever they start talking about inner cities. If we're going to talk about who the, quote, welfare queens are, which, one, also a very racist thing to call anyone.
And
two,
it's not real, and it was also like created just to...
That's what I was going to say.
Okay,
it's
sorry, go ahead.
Not real. It's not a real thing anybody is. It was intentionally used to try to make Black women look bad or feel bad about, trying to feed their kids. And three, if we have any, quote, welfare queens, what it is the whole red state in general, like the state, the Republican controlled states. Those are the ones that are using the American resources. Right. Not a mother of three who's just like wanting to pay her rent and feed her kids and, live life.
And also, guess who's statistically more likely to be on state assistance?
Dun, 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 dun.
White people.
Especially white people who are more likely to also vote Republican.
Yep. It's not great. It's not great. Okay, I wrote you a quiz. It's not like a test. It's like a true or false. Like it's I'm going to read you a name and you have to tell me if you think it's a dark money group or not.
Okay.
Okay, the first one is Western Tradition Partnership.
No.
It is. Western Tradition Partnership.
That sounds so stupid.
I know. All right, how about this one?
Western Tradition? What does that even... I don't want to even know what that means.
How about American Tradition Partnership?
Probably.
Yep. I already spoiled this one. Mothers Against Child Predators.
Great. Yep.
Americans for Prosperity.
Oh, I know that is one.
Yep, that's a real one. And I spoiled this one too. Right to Work.
Yep.
So those are all just in Montana, but they're everywhere too, and I think all of them are Koch funded too. So it's like Kochtopus, like they're everywhere. They have their hands in everything, and it's very confusing. They make it look like a lot of different things, and it's not. So he's my asshole of the week, that Koch brother.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a very, very controversial decision, Citizens United. It happened on January 21st, 2010. So I think you were probably a senior in high school. I was a freshman in college. I was getting ready for I was probably just about to start taper for my first championship season as a college swimmer. So I wasn't paying super close attention, but basically corporations took control of democracy that day. But yeah, if you take anything away from this, just remember that corporations are not people. Actually, I forgot to mention this earlier, but the FEC was actually started in response to Watergate. So it's kind of funny that it's essentially doesn't even work now because of how much Republicans want to damage the United States. But, you know what? there's more to the beginning of this story that's actually really interesting. I'm going to tell you that part.
Oh, wait, there's more.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I'll try to make it fast. Basically, allowing unlimited corporate donations is like handing rich citizens megaphones. The thing that's really interesting is that that makes Justice Kennedy look kind of like a coward, because he kind of is. The Citizens United ruling came before the Supreme Court, and there was one justice on the court, Justice Souter, who fully understood what the implications of passing Citizens United would be. And he was right. It came before the court, and for an entire like season or whatever they're called of like Supreme Court rulings. Season is definitely not right. It's not The Bachelor, but you know what I mean. Session? I don't know. They talked about it. Kennedy made it very clear that he was in favor of the Citizens United, or that and he's the swing vote. So for a really long time, that court was called like Kennedy's court, because all the decisions basically came down to him. He was a lot of people referred to him as the most important person in America. So,
wow.
What?
That's a lot.
It is. It's a lot of power. Especially for somebody has libertarian ideologies that like do not work in real life. So he got to decide a lot of shit for a really long time. He's also the one who retired so that Kavanaugh could have a court seat, and nobody really knows why he retired so abruptly, or who paid off like at least several $100,000 in debt that Kavanaugh had. And bought themselves a Supreme Court seat. Nobody knows. So when we talk about how our courts are not unbiased, that's one thing that we're talking about. But anyway, before that happened in 2010, actually this was probably in 2009, they got to the last day of the session, and if you issue the ruling, then the dissent also gets released. And Justice Souter issued a super scathing dissent of the Citizens United ruling. So it got to, or at least he would if the ruling was established. So it got to the last day of the session, and they announced two things. Justice Kennedy announced, one, that they were pushing the Citizens United ruling to the next session, and two, that Justice Souter was retiring. So he's a huge fucking pussy, and he was like, I'm not going to rule on it because this dissent, if we rule on it now, this dissent gets published and I look bad. If we rule on it next session, this guy's going to retire and his dissent won't get published for 50 years after he dies. And like by then he'll be dead too. So isn't that like so disappointing?
Wow.
Yeah.
That makes me mad.
That's what a lot of people refer to as the most important person, or for a long time was the most important person in America. It's just a giant baby. So he avoided arguing the case until the next term, ensuring that Souter's dissent would never be published, or at least not for 50 years. So he's basically a coward. He did it to save face. It's just so annoying. The thing that he was worried about was like a non-issue. He thought it violated free speech. Technically, like I said, it's about a 90-minute documentary about Hillary Clinton, and whether that 90-minute campaign ad was a 90-minute thing was a campaign ad, or if it was totally separate. They decided that it was fine, and now we're all fucked. It's so stupid. A quote that he said when he was talking, Justice Kennedy, he said, "The First Amendment confirms the freedom to think for ourselves." And it's like, okay, well, most Americans are dumb and susceptible to propaganda, and like they don't think for them, like they need.
Yeah, Americans are not good at doing that.
No, and I don't know, it just reminds me of like the couple things that they've been taking down, like of Trump's on Facebook, or just misinformation, because Facebook, or maybe it's Twitter. No, it was, okay, whatever it was. They took it down because it had misinformation about the census. Is that what it was? I think that's what it was. They took something down on Facebook, but like 50,000 people had already seen it. Like, are they going to reach out to those 50,000 people and be like, oh, hey, sorry, that was a mistake? No. Like those 50,000 people are never going to know that the information that they saw was not true. And that's why like it just has to be prevented in the first place. It's so stupid. Everything. Why aren't we in charge of more stuff?
For real.
One like thing that I think I actually do remember from 2010 is that Obama called it out in the State of the Union. So like the ruling was issued, and then like the next week Obama called it out in the State of the Union and was like, this is going to allow unlimited spending in campaign politics. And Judge Samuel Alito mouthed, he either said like, oh, he said that's not true. He like mouthed that's not true. And it's like, okay, well, yes, it was, bitch. Like, look, it's been 10 years. We've seen exactly what the result was. And the result is that like corporations own politicians. So when asked if Kennedy was regrets the decision a few years later, he said he doesn't. He said he doesn't like what's going on with money in politics, but that the real issue is disclosure laws. So it's fine to show people whatever, as long as later they can go to the FEC website and check to see who donated to the campaign that might be influencing their platform. Like I said, not a thing that people are going to do. You just shouldn't allow it in the first place. Like, don't give me fucking homework. Just like, show me true stuff to begin with. So yeah, that's why we like candidates who don't take super PAC money or PAC money. I mean, no PAC money at all, like just grassroots donor is ideal, but like PAC money you can at least trace. No super PAC money because we have no idea where that's from. It's probably from the Kochs, but it could be from anywhere. And also like the other part about having stronger disclosure laws is like rich people are really good at just getting around them. Mm-hmm. So it's more important to keep the contributions from happening at all than just to keep track of where the contributions are coming from. So yeah, so the FEC could make stronger disclosure laws, but they don't because the Republicans on the commission don't want to do anything. And so that's my very long explanation of the Citizens United ruling and how stupid the beginning of it was. And the answer is fixing it at the state level, unfortunately, which is harder, but good and can be done. And they did it in Montana. Some of the documentaries that I was watching about it happened before Gorsuch and Kavanaugh got on the court. So it was a little bit more like, we just have to fix the Supreme Court. And now it's like, oh, the swing vote is not actually a swing vote anymore. It's a super, super right wing, actually. So not ideal, but that's that. Do you have any questions about dark money? Did I teach you anything?
I learned a lot. Like, I didn't know a lot of this, so that's very interesting. But like, I have questions, but they're not questions you're going to be able to answer. They're more like questions I want to like write on a brick and then throw through a window.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? That's what I want. That's my question.
What the fuck were you thinking?
Yeah.
Also, good job. It took you 10 years to ruin democracy. Thanks for that. Yeah.
Super. Well, you know, democracy. What is democracy?
Yeah.
It's fine.
I don't know.
I mean, yeah, if anybody really wants a little bit of a democracy downer, you know how I was talking about how well all of our like absentee ballot voting works in Iowa. Oh yes, well, we can't have nice things. So just today, right? It's Wednesday. Yep. Just today, Senate Republicans passed a bill that will prohibit Iowans from being able to get an absentee ballot request without first sending a request for the request. So like now for me to vote absentee, I have to send a request to the Secretary of State, who will then send me a request. And then I can send that request back, and then they'll send me my absentee ballot. Because Republicans love to make it harder for people to vote. They do not want free and fair elections. And again, anytime somebody who supports prohibiting Americans from being able to exercise their right to vote, if they try to like mention that they're patriotic, shut that down, because they're not.
Ask why.
Because they're actively trying to keep people from being able to participate in a free and fair election. Let's look at Georgia this week, right?
Yeah. It's antithetical to everything that our country stands for.
Yeah.
What happened in Georgia? So do I want to know what happened in Georgia?
They had their primary this week, and I mean, that's why Georgia was our first swing state, right? Because Georgia's got some real fucked up election problems, and the work that like Stacey Abrams trying to do with Fair Fight 2020 and stuff is so important. But nonetheless, it was a shit show, and there were extremely long lines for people to vote, and people had to stand in those long lines, even if they were very old or sick or had children or had to work that day or whatnot. Like hours in line to vote. That is also un-American.
It's basically a poll tax.
Yeah, it basically is. Also, it's, of course, also a racist structure. So Black people have to vote or have to stand in line to vote like 29% longer than white people.
Yep.
Like, I just want to scream. No other wealthy country has this problem. Like, no other wealthy country has this many election problems.
Most of them have federally funded elections. Or most of them have election day as a federal holiday. Like, most people act like they want their citizens to vote.
We should not have these types of barriers to voting in this country. It is appalling. Not to mention, not only do they have just those kinds of problems, you know, that we've talked about before with the gerrymandering and the let's try to make sure that Black people can't vote and all of that, but they also had like actual problems with the voting machines.
Yeah, like new ones too.
Yeah, like their new voting machines weren't working.
Great.
Holy crap. How is this happening? It's not good. I know. And I'm just so frustrated. Like, voting, it is just the most like simple, basic American right. And we still are doing this.
We're like begging. Yeah.
It makes me feel really nervous for November.
For sure.
We already know that Trump's going to try to steal the election again. And it's like these kinds of things which make me feel very nervous that they're going to be successful in stealing the election again.
Yeah.
When they can prevent people from voting, it really makes it a lot easier for them. When they can have, you know, literally broken voting machines, it makes it a lot easier for them. When they can continue passing legislation that makes it more difficult for people. And I don't know, it makes me feel really nervous. It's not good. I don't know how to fix it immediately, but I'm going to work very hard on it, and I'm going to probably donate more money to like Fair Fight 2020 because I'm just so mad.
Can I bring up one more thing about Citizens United that I forgot?
Always.
Is that like another thing that it probably, like a really unintended consequence is that it made it so that elected officials have to spend like an insane amount of time fundraising. So they spend like 4 hours a day on the phone, and they also like host a fundraiser like on average every 3 days that they're in Congress. And all of that time spent doing that is time that they're not spent legislating. So like, can you imagine if you went to work and like the first half of your day you spent doing actual health education shit, and then the second half of your day you had to call people to convince them to fund the part of your job from your, and like they break it down so that you need like X amount of dollars each quarter, which means you need X amount of callers each, or X amount of dollars from callers each day, and they break it down to like hourly, and you have somebody with them who's like, okay, you need to make $400 this hour. So, well, actually, and what a lot of people do too is they know how much money they need to raise, so they don't call people who are going to give them less than $1,000. So they're not calling you and me, because I'm not dropping $1,000 on anybody's campaign. They're so like once again, it's just another example. It's like a very unintended, undemocratic consequence of Citizens United is that it makes their job so much harder because they have to spend such an annoying amount of time fundraising, and it makes them beholden to the people who give them the big dollars. So thanks, Kennedy.
Yeah, that's a huge issue.
Yeah. Yep. It's super annoying. Super annoying. So we got work to do. It's just another example. This probably very easily could have been like one of the first couple episodes to like understand, give people like a lay at, I don't know, an example, just what the layout of U.S. politics look like, is because you can pretty much like sum it up very well in what's wrong with Citizens United.
Yeah.
For political actions, through Adopt a State, through Vote Save America, I went to an organizing call last Thursday. They have them every Thursday in the month of June if you want to jump on any organizing calls. It was actually very good. I think this Thursday is maybe John Favreau. Next week is Dan Pfeiffer. And then the week after is John Lovett, I think. And I like hearing those people talk, so I'm excited. Another example of something you can do, you can follow End Citizens United on social media, and then you can also sign up for the action alerts on their website. Unfortunately, probably the biggest difference you can make in ending Citizens United is supporting candidates who don't take large dollar donations, because they're basically already acting like Citizens United has already been ended, which is especially impressive because they know that the other politicians are all taking steroids because they're taking these huge big dollar donations, and they're saying like, I don't need to take steroids to be good at like, I know that I could cheat and I'm not going to because I think it's wrong, and like I think that should be rewarded. So like that's really those people very clearly understand campaign finance reform and would do something about it once they got in office. But the way we have it right now is like we're so far from that because we have 100 Republicans in Congress who signed the Koch brothers sheet that said they wouldn't do anything about climate change. So like we have to work on that before we can fix all the other stuff, but that is easy. So yeah.
And that's kind of something that it made me think of too. Like, just because it's not illegal doesn't mean it's ethical.
Right.
And I love the idea of living in an America where ethics still matter.
Right.
And I think that that's something we should all try to think a little bit more about, is just like ethics. I mean, as a weird ass random family member decided to remind me this week, racism isn't illegal. And I'm like, okay, right, but also it's bad.
Yeah.
Like, what is wrong with you?
That's how I feel when like 35-year-olds are like, well, it's not illegal for me to date this 19-year-old. And it's like, I know it's not illegal, but
it's still really gross.
Yep. Bye forever.
Yeah. So.
And please let your 19-year-old girlfriend come with me.
If you are a young listener and a man is possibly, if you even have to think a little bit, I wonder if he's too old. He is. Too old.
Why isn't he hanging out with girls his own age? It's because they don't want him, and he thinks you don't know better.
Yeah, and you are great. Like, you actually are that great. We promise you. But that's not why he wants you.
No.
He wants you because he thinks you're dumb because you're young, and girls
easy to manipulate.
His own age don't like him because he's a Kevin.
Right.
So.
And you don't know better yet, but we're here to tell you.
Oh, girl, you will learn. But I hope you don't have to learn the way that we did.
Yes, but I think most of the time you probably do. What else did I do? So I donated some money to End Citizens United. I have been posting, this isn't specific. I think that's pretty much the end of my like Citizens United specific stuff, but I've become more, I don't know. I've just been more open about posting stuff on social media. Like I said, not necessarily about Citizens United, but just about Black Lives Matter and stuff. And it is very important. I think it's more important than people understand to take at least a little bit of a stand on social media so that other people see where they stand. And so I want to not that I'm like a social media expert in any way, but like with social media posts, they should have like a hook, the information that people need, and you should try to provide all the information that people need because people are lazy as fuck. So you have to give them everything that they need. And then you should end with a call to action. So spreading your views period is great, but if you're trying to actually like affect change with your posts, keep in mind that it should like have a hook so that it catches people's attention, all the information people need so they don't have to search anywhere else because they will not do that. And then a call to action so that people know like what they're actually supposed to do. You kind of have to like hold people's hands if you want them to do, I don't know, to help. I also donated money to Mondaire Jones, who is a progressive candidate in New York, who I really hope wins his primary coming up. Yes. You know what? I don't know. Mondaire Jones for Congress or something in New York. And then I've already written 40 letters to Pennsylvania this week because I've just been, I don't know, anxious about everything. And I say Pennsylvania because my Michigan campaign wrapped up. We wrote all the letters possible to Michigan. There's no more Michigan addresses left. I had to switch to Pennsylvania, which is good. Yay. What else? What about you?
Aside from the things that I kind of already talked about with like, oh, well, I'm going to have to donate to Fair Fight 2020 again. I finally have found like a whole list of local organizations that are pro Black Lives Matter, like local organizations that are actively working to support equality in my community. Nice. And I really think it all starts local. So
how'd you find that?
Doing that. I joined a Facebook group that was like local and somebody had shared it there, which I was like, great, because I had been Googling, but like I wasn't really getting results that were making me feel comfortable. I was getting things that, again, I was like, this seems like it could actually just be a front for something that's not really actually accomplishing much. It's probably better now. It was like a week ago when I first did my little Google search. And then I also found a list of like Black owned businesses, and some of them are ones that I've already been to and I know are really wonderful. And I'm just like, great. Well, I didn't know that was Black owned, and now I feel even better about going there and eating until I have to be rolled out of the building. Or ones that I'm like, great, like now I know some new places I'm going to try. And on that whole like local, like impacting things locally, I attended the city council meeting on Monday.
Oh, nice.
Which everyone should do. Like, if you've never been to a city council meeting, like go to a city council meeting, especially like, okay, yeah, fine. They can be a little bit boring sometimes.
But sometimes they're not.
Other times they're not. And often it's still important information.
Yeah.
It was really cool. Obviously it was over Zoom. There were 1,000 people.
I think that's so impressive for Des Moines. I mean, I don't really know how big Des Moines is, but 1,000 sounds like a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite a lot. Like the fact that they couldn't let any more in after that, and some people listening were like listening in groups too. I think so many people wanted to speak. So many people signed up to speak. They didn't even get through most of the agenda items because there were so many speakers, and it was just really, really cool. I mean, there are organizations here who have been working on police reform and racial equality for years. And now they're like, oh, crap. Oh, city council's like, we really got to talk about this. We really got to pass this. And these people are like, no, we're not going to rush this through. We've been working on this for a really long time. We're not going to let you just rush through a vote just to make yourselves like look good, feel good. Like we're going to still do this right. And that was really cool. Yeah, it was really disheartening that there were a few people who signed up to speak and use that time to say things that were inappropriate. I'm not going to repeat here, you can imagine. Good. But those were few, and it was powerful, and it was really cool, and it made me really excited to know that there's over 1,000 people in my community who also care as much as I do. Yeah. And so just kind of that reminder that local politics are so important. Know what's going on with your city council. You can't sit in on your city council meetings or log in to listen. At least afterwards, read the meeting minutes or try to find a video, check the newspaper. There's always, if you've got local journalism anyway, there's always going to be a journalist there.
Yeah.
It's very important. So that's another action I want to encourage everyone to take.
For sure. All right. This has been a really long episode, and I think that's a pretty good ending because I wanted to end with the video of the man from the LA City Council meeting. I think it's important for everybody to hear this, and I also think his energy towards police reform is correct.
Thank you. Jeremy Fresh, followed by Juan Ramirez.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, yes.
Black Lives Matter, defund the police. I find it disgusting that the LAPD is slaughtering peaceful protesters on the street. I had 2 friends go to the protest in Beverly Hills a couple of days ago, and the protest was peaceful until the police showed up with their excessive violent force, shooting rubber bullets and throwing tear gas. Is this what you think of protecting and serving? Because I think it's bullshit. Fuck you, Michael Moore. I refuse to call you an officer or a chief because you don't deserve those titles. You are a disgrace. Suck my dick and choke on it. I yield my time. Fuck you.
The way that makes the most sense for me to think about it is the goal is defund the police and the attitude is fuck the police. And this guy has it absolutely right. So listen to him. Other than that, until next time, stay sexy.
And end Citizens United.
Perfect. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you guys so much for listening to For Your Misinformation. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast, and if you like it, give us a rating and a review. It helps us find more listeners, and the more of us there are, the better.
And make sure you're following along on Instagram and Twitter at FYMI Pod.
Shout out to Kyle Dibdahl for the intro and outro music, Hope Dye for the podcast art, and Ben Schlofelt for the audio production.
We come out with new episodes every Monday.